I'm 88 years old, and there's one moment in my life that still sits in my chest like a stone I never swallowed properly. It wasn't a war, it wasn't a funeral, it wasn't even some dramatic fight with shouting and slammed doors. It was a quiet day, a regular day, the kind of day you don't think will matter. And it was the day I stopped saying what I felt. I'm sitting here now in a small room that smells faintly of medicine and old wood. Window sticks when I try to open it, so I don't bother most days. The light comes in anyway, thin and pale. It lands on my hands, and I can see the veins like blue roots under the skin. I don't have many people left to talk to. That's not a complaint. It's just the truth. Time takes people. It takes them slowly and then all at once. One year you're going to weddings, the next you're going to funerals. Then you stop going anywhere at all. I'm not telling you this story because I want pity. I don't need anyone to feel sorry for me. I've had a full life, at least on paper. I worked. I raised children. I paid bills. I did what a man was supposed to do. But there's a difference between living a life and being in your own life. And I spent most of mine standing just outside of it, watching, staying quiet, keeping things inside because I thought that was what grown men did. I thought silence was strength. I was wrong. When I was younger, I had feelings like anyone else. I loved hard. I got hurt. I wanted things. I dreamed about things. I was jealous sometimes, afraid sometimes, lonely sometimes. But I learned early that nobody was interested in hearing a boy talk about his feelings. My father was a man who didn't speak unless he had to. He worked with his hands. He came home tired. He ate, he drank his coffee, and he sat in his chair like the world had drained him dry. If you asked him what was wrong, he'd look at you like you de-insulted him. My mother was softer, but even she had a way of swallowing her own sadness. She'd wipe her hands on her apron and say, "It's fine," even when it was. So that's what I learned. You keep things inside, you do your job, you don't make trouble, you don't burden people with your heart. When I was 23, I met a girl named Helen. She wasn't loud, she wasn't flashy, she didn't walk into a room like she owned it. She had a quiet laugh and eyes that noticed everything. She was the kind of woman who could tell you were tired before you said a word. She'd ask, "Did you eat today?" Not because she was trying to mother you, but because she cared in a way that felt natural. We met at a church social. I wasn't even planning to go. A friend dragged me along. I stood near the wall with a cup of punch, thinking about how I'd rather be home. Then she walked up and asked me if I was always this cheerful. That was her joke. I remember it because nobody had ever teased me like that before. Not kindly anyway. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled, and she smiled back, and something in me loosened. We got married 2 years later. People say young love is foolish, but it didn't feel foolish. It felt steady. It felt like building something simple and solid. We rented a small place with thin walls. You could hear the neighbors coughing at night. We didn't have much. We had a table with a wobble in one leg and a sofa that smelled like someone else's cigarettes. But we were happy. At least I think we were. I worked long hours. That's what you did. I was proud to provide, proud to come home with my hands dirty and my pockets empty, but my bills paid. Helen would be in the kitchen humming. She'd turn around and smile when I walked in. Sometimes she'd reach for me right there in the doorway, just a touch on my arm, a kiss on my cheek, and I would let her. But I didn't always return it the way I should have. Not because I didn't feel it, because I did. God, I did. But there was something in me that hesitated, like affection was a language I understood but didn't speak fluently. I could say thank you. I could say good job. I could say I'll take care of it. But I love you felt dangerous, not because I didn't mean it, but because once you say something like that out loud, it becomes real. It becomes something you can lose. So I said it less and less, and then I stopped saying it altogether. It didn't happen in one big decision. It happened the way most mistakes happen, quietly, gradually, like dust collecting on a shelf you never look at. There was a day I remember when Helen asked me if I was happy. We were washing dishes. The radio was on low. Our first child was asleep in the other room. It was a normal evening. She didn't ask dramatically. She didn't cry. She just said, "Are you happy, Frank?" Dried my hands on a towel and said, "Of course." And that should have been enough. It should have reassured her, but she didn't smile. She just nodded slowly like she'd heard something else underneath my words. Then she said, "You don't talk anymore." I laughed a little like she was being silly. "I talk," I said. She looked at me, not angry, just tired. "You talk about work," she said. "You talk about bills, you talk about what needs fixing, but you don't talk about you." I remember feeling irritated. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right, and I didn't know what to do with that. I said, "I'm fine, Helen." That was my favorite phrase. "I'm fine, everything's fine." She turned back to the sink and didn't say anything else. And that was the moment, not because it was dramatic, but because I felt something inside me trying to rise up. Something honest, something tender. I wanted to say, "I'm scared sometimes. I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know if I'm enough for you. I don't know if I'm enough for the kids. I'm tired. I miss you even when you're standing right here." I wanted to say, "I love you." But I didn't. I swallowed it. I decided it was better to keep the peace. I decided it was better to stay strong. I decided she didn't need to hear all that. And once I made that decision, it became easier the next time. And the next. That's the part people don't understand about regret. They think it's one big mistake you can point to. But most of it is small choices you barely notice. A conversation you postpone, a hug you don't return, a sentence you keep behind your teeth. I kept telling myself there would be time later. There would be a better moment, a calmer day, a weekend when I wasn't tired. But life doesn't hand you the perfect moment. It just keeps moving whether you're ready or not. The kids grew up in a house that was stable, yes, but it was also quiet. I was present, but I wasn't open. I went to their school events, but I didn't tell them I was proud of them unless they brought home something that could be measured. A grade, a trophy, a certificate. I didn't know how to praise the parts of them that weren't visible. Their kindness, their curiosity, their softness. I didn't know how to talk about softness at all. Helen tried, she really did. She'd sit next to me on the couch at night and tell me little things she noticed, things she worried about, things she hoped for, and I'd listen. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't dismissive, but I wasn't giving her anything back. I'd nod, I'd say, it'll work out. Sometimes she'd pause in the middle of talking and look at me like she was waiting for something. And I never gave it, not because I didn't care, because I didn't know how. There's a kind of loneliness that comes from being married to someone who never says what they feel. And I didn't see it at first. I thought providing was love. I thought fixing the leaky faucet was love. I thought staying faithful was love. And those things are love in a way, but they aren't the whole thing, not even close. Years went by, we got older, our hair turned gray, our routines became predictable. Work, dinner, sleep. Work, dinner, sleep, and the silence between us grew thicker. It wasn't angry silence. It was the silence of two people who stopped reaching. I remember one morning, I must have been in my late 50s, Helen was standing at the kitchen counter making coffee. She had a robe on and her hair was messy. She looked tired, not just sleepy, tired in the bones. I walked up behind her and put my hand on her shoulder. She flinched. Not because she was afraid of me, because she wasn't used to being touched anymore. That hurt more than I can explain. I asked her if she was okay. She said, "I'm fine." And I knew in that moment that she had learned my language. That's what I gave her. I gave her "I'm fine." I gave her silence. I gave her a home where feelings stayed hidden like something shameful. I didn't fix it then. I should have. I could have, but I didn't because fixing it meant admitting I'd broken something in the first place. Then came the day that changed everything. It was an ordinary Tuesday. That's what I remember most. Not a holiday, not an anniversary, just Tuesday. Helen had been complaining about her stomach for a few weeks. She said she felt bloated. She said food didn't taste right. She said she was tired all the time. I told her to go to the doctor. She said she would. She didn't. People put things off. That's what we do. We think discomfort is temporary. We think the body is just having a bad week. Then one morning she couldn't get out of bed. Her skin looked pale, almost gray. She tried to sit up and couldn't. She said she felt dizzy. I drove her to the hospital. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, but I kept my voice calm. I kept telling her everything would be all right. I still believed in that phrase, everything will be all right, like saying it could make it true. They ran tests. They kept her overnight, then another night. Then a doctor pulled me aside in a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. He told me it was cancer. He said it had spread. He said there were things they could do, but it wasn't going to be a simple fight. I stood there and nodded like I understood, like I was strong enough to hear it. But inside me, something collapsed. I walked back into her room and she looked up at me from the bed. She tried to smile. Even then, she said, "What did he say?" And I looked at her and I couldn't speak. I couldn't say the word. I couldn't say cancer because saying it out loud made it real. So I said, "They're still figuring it out." And she nodded. She believed me, or maybe she just wanted to. The months after that were a blur of appointments and waiting rooms and medications lined up on the counter. Our house turned into a place of quiet suffering. Helen lost weight. Her hair thinned. Her eyes became larger in her face. And still, she tried to be gentle with me. Even while she was dying, she tried to protect me from her own death. That's the kind of woman she was. One night, she woke up and asked me to sit with her. It was late. The house was dark. The kids were grown and gone by then. It was just us. She patted the edge of the bed and I sat down. She reached for my hand. Her fingers felt cold. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "Did you ever love me, Frank?" I felt like someone had punched me, because of course I loved her. I loved her every day. I loved her when she burned dinner. I loved her when she laughed at my bad jokes. I loved her when she fell asleep on the couch with a book on her chest. I loved her when she got older and her face changed and her hands got rougher. I loved her, but I hadn't said it, not enough, not in the ways that mattered. So I squeezed her hand and said, "You know I did." And she nodded again, that nod, that quiet nod that carried so much sadness in it. Then she whispered, "I wish you had told me." I didn't cry in front of her. I wanted to. My throat burned, my eyes stung, but I held it back like I always did. I said, "I'm here." And she said, "I know." That was the last real conversation we had. She died 2 weeks later. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow. She became smaller, quieter, like a candle burning down to the wick. On the last day, she wasn't awake. Her breathing was shallow. I sat by her bed holding her hand, and I finally said everything. I told her I loved her. I told her she was the best thing that ever happened to me. I told her I was sorry. I told her I should have been softer. I told her I didn't know how to say things, but I should have learned. I said it all. And she didn't hear any of it. Or maybe she did in some way I can't understand. I hope she did. I still hope that, but I'll never know. That's the part that stays with you, not the fact that she died. People die. That's the rule. That's how it ends. What stays with me is that I waited until the end to speak. I waited until it didn't matter anymore. After she was gone, the house felt enormous. Even though it was the same size, it felt like I was living inside an empty box. I'd wake up and reach across the bed, forgetting she wasn't there. I'd walk into the kitchen and expect to hear her humming. I'd open the closet and see her coat still hanging there. And I realized something. The silence I had built around myself didn't protect me. It trapped me. It didn't keep pain away. It just made sure I faced pain alone. I tried to talk more after that. I tried with my children. I tried to tell them I loved them. I tried to say I was proud, but they looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language, and maybe I was. It's a strange thing to become a different man at 65. People don't trust it. They think it's temporary. They think it's guilt. They think it's a mood. And maybe it was guilt, but it was also truth. I wish I could tell you I fixed everything, that I became warm and open, and that my children and I grew closer. We did a little, but not fully. You can't rewrite decades. You can't erase the shape of the man you were. Even now at 88, I sit in this room and I think about all the times Helen waited for me to speak. All the times she gave me chances. All the nights she wanted to be seen, not just housed. And I didn't give it to her, not because I didn't love her, because I was afraid. I was afraid of sounding foolish, afraid of being rejected, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of needing someone, so I played the part of a strong man. And the price of that strength was intimacy. It was closeness. It was warmth. It was the kind of love you can feel in your bones. If you're listening to this and you're young, I won't tell you what to do. I don't like preaching. I never did. But I'll tell you what I wish I had understood. People don't need you to be perfect. They don't even need you to be strong all the time. They need you to be real. They need to hear what you feel while you still have a mouth to say it and they still have ears to hear it. Because once someone is gone, you can say all the beautiful things you want. You can whisper them into an empty room. You can write them in letters no one will read. And it won't change anything. It won't reach them. And it won't reach you either, not in the way you need. I used to think love was something you proved by working hard. Now I think love is something you prove by speaking, even when your voice shakes. By telling the truth before it's too late. There are so many moments I thought I could save for later. Later never came, or it came wearing a hospital gown and an oxygen tube. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of someone, you can leave a comment if you want. Sometimes it helps to know we're not the only ones carrying these things. I don't have much time left. I can feel that. My body is slower. My memory is full of holes. I forget names. I forget why I walked into a room, but I don't forget Helen. And I don't forget that look in her eyes when she said, "I wish you had told me." That sentence is still alive in me. I've lived 88 years. I've had good days. I've had hard ones. But if I could go back to that kitchen sink, to that night with the dishes and the radio playing low, I wouldn't say I'm fine. I would turn to her and tell her the truth. I would tell her I loved her. And I would keep telling her. Because love that stays inside you doesn't warm anybody. It just dies quietly with you. And when you're my age, you realize how many things die quietly. That's all I have left to say. Not a lesson, not advice. Just a confession from an old man who waited too long to speak, and who still regrets it every single day.